Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator and anti-crystallite, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy Monday. It's Makeover Monday. It's a day that you can say, you know what? It was a tough week and I ate a lot of Halloween candy, but that's over because it's Monday. We can always rebirth ourselves. Isn't that good news? Whatever you were yesterday, yesterday's gone. It's a new day. You know what I realized, Kaustubha? I don't even like candy.
When you get older,
I
it's kind of like, I like this kind of thing.
I know. Yeah. I had one Reese's. I took Tarun out yesterday. I had one Reese's because that was my favorite. And I was like, I feel like hell. I feel horrible. What is in a Reese's? You know what happened?
Because you broke a Kadashi. Maybe that's what it was.
You know what? I broke it by mistake in the morning with a corn muffin, a gluten-free corn muffin that I made the day before. I was like, man, no one ate my corn muffins. And I ate it, broke a Kadashi. Sometimes you think like gluten-free is not a... Sometimes you think like gluten-free.
No, I never think that.
Gluten-free is a Kadashi.
I absolutely never think that. I don't equate gluten-free with a Kadashi.
Anyway, it's true. I mean, I eat those Justin's, what are they called? Justin's peanut butter cups. Yeah. I eat those things like water, and I feel pretty good. But the regular commercial candy, man.
Yeah, it's junk.
Instant karma when you eat that stuff.
There you go.
Yeah. And guess what? Mara's giving a boxing class. I was like, are we doing Sweet Baby Krishna tonight? And she's like, actually, I'm teaching a boxing class.
For real?
I was like, what? What?
Really?
Box the Chef,
boxing?
it's called. Box the Chef. She dresses in a full chef costume.
No, for real. Are you doing that, Mara? Are you teaching boxing?
She's actually teaching a boxing class.
How did you learn boxing?
I had a coach for a couple of years.
I told you she's strong.
I think I can take her, though.
I don't know.
I think I can take Mara. And then me and Mara spun that out of control, like hit the target, knock the chef in the pot in the water. Ever see those things like at a fair? Hit the target, you throw a bean bag and the chef goes in the water. Not the chef, but it would be funny if she was dressed as a chef. It'd be even funny if she went into like spaghetti sauce. That's where I went this morning with Mara.
Okay, Raghunath, please, let's pull this together now. Let's please pull this together.
I'm trying to keep it as light as we can before we get to the Pradhan, because I know it's going to get thick quick.
Okay. Mara, are there any announcements to make today?
We do have announcements.
Okay.
We have two Bhakti recovery group meetings today at 1 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And there's a Sweet Baby Krishna tonight for Patreon members at 7:30 Eastern time. And then tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m., Michelle Berger is offering an asana class for our Patreon members.
Okay, excellent.
That is beautiful. And that brings us to a great letter we got. Can I share this letter?
Okay.
Check this out. Just wanted to let you know that
Who's
Karuna. So this is from Karuna's mom. So Karuna, if you don't know, she's been our 8-year-old Zoomer from Lebanon.
Every day.
She said, yeah. And so she said, just wanted to let you know that Karuna is now a Patreon member of Wisdom of the Sages.
That's incredible.
I told Karuna about Patreon, and she said she wanted to become a member and support all your fantastic work, and of course get access to Sweet Baby Krishna. So sometime, by the way, for her in Lebanon to watch Sweet Baby Krishna, she sets an alarm, this 8-year-old, for 2:30 a.m., I think, or 2 a.m. She sometimes during the week, she goes with her dad to work. We have a family business, and she actually does some work and gets paid. Okay. Recently, she has been saving up to buy ice cream, but yesterday she gave me almost all of her savings to make her $1 contribution for the month. She plans on putting aside the equivalent in Lebanese lira each month to cover that $1. She was quite happy about it too. She loves the show and looks forward to joining every day, especially, Kaustubha, take note, especially hearing Raghunath's funny comments. Okay. As her mom,
Raghunath, you're definitely appealing to our the 8-year-old
our 8-year-old demographic.
Yeah, our 8-year-old demographic. You got it covered.
As her mom, just let me say that besides my own gratitude for the show, I'm so happy that it is encouraging her to go deeper into the Bhagavatam and also how it inspired a giving back spirit. My deep pranams, Mother Tulsi.
Mother Tulsi is so nice. I spoke to her briefly the other day, and Karuna, that is so it's so appreciated over here that you would sacrifice your ice cream money for Wisdom of the Sages. Thank you.
So the question is today, what will you all sacrifice for Wisdom of the Sages?
Okay, maybe that should be the next T-shirt. What will you sacrifice?
Yes, if you're not a Patreon member, come on! I'm gonna grab you by your ankles and shake you.
All right, let's get this started.
Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
I'm just sitting here realizing this could spin out of control at any moment. Yeah, let's bring it to our guest.
We have a special guest today. Chaitanya Tran is back.
He's back.
Because we just sort of picked his brain on Friday, but now we're really going to get into this chapter of understanding material nature. And he is, if you don't know him, he is the spiritual scientist. That's his website, thespiritualscientist.com. He got that URL before any other spiritual scientist could jump on it. He was already there. Welcome to the show, Chaitanya Tran Prabhu. We're happy to have you.
Happy to be back here, bro.
There he is.
Thank you for lightening
the brahmachari.
I think thank you for lightening the mood before I make it heavy.
He appears on many different kind of programs and podcasts, but none of them quite start the way that we just started, I think.
Yes. None of the scientific podcasts start like that, reading letters from 8-year-olds.
Okay.
Welcome, Prabhu.
Shall we dive right in? You were all over the place this weekend, Prabhu, too. I saw you Namaras interviewed you on Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. For the what is it again, the late morning program?
Yeah, we had been working it out for a long time. Finally it worked out.
Very good. So that's something to check out there. And then you were also, I saw another one. Was it Jani?
Kishori Jani.
Kishori Jani, yeah.
She is quite a dynamic devotee in UK.
She is. Mm-hmm.
And some of you may know that some of our devotees in Bangladesh were attacked by some extremists.
We spoke about that on the show.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concern, fear, anger in India especially. Because in Bengal, Mayapur is very close to Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of immigration from there. And that part of Bengal is also, the demography is changing.
So a lot of people's relatives may still live there and they're concerned for them and so on.
So even devotees, when they go out from Mayapur for Kirtan, earlier they could go to all parts of Mayapur. Now they cannot go and do Kirtan in all parts of Mayapur.
Really? So, even in Bengal itself, even in West Bengal?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay. So that you discussed that on that show?
Yeah.
With Kishori Jani?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Prabhu. Well, let's Raghunath, why don't you go ahead and chant our mantras, and we'll get started, and we'll get into this chapter. I think we're going to just try to summarize the whole rest of this chapter today.
All right. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam veram saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to this Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurin Milatam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. We're in it.
Chapter?
26.
Chapter 26.
26.
Yeah. And so, we last Friday we brought Chaitanya Charan, spiritual scientist, on here to help discuss this chapter, and we discussed it in a more general sense. Now what we'd like to do is get right into some of these verses. We're not going to read all the verses, but maybe start with a few verses and then get some summaries and dip into different verses throughout it, and then maybe check out where it all ends. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we got up to, around text 19 in our studies before. And it's right about text 19 where it starts to get, some of the languages becomes unclear, and it's a little difficult to make sense of it. So why don't I read text like 19 and 20 and maybe and see what you can, how you can help us understand it. Does that sound okay?
Can I suggest something, if you don't mind?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So last time we concluded in this topic that how, whereas the modern scientific approach of matter focuses more on analyzing and controlling matter,
Yes.
whereas the Bhagavatam's approach, Sankhya's approach, is more on the experience of matter.
Mm-hmm.
So by that analysis of the experience, gradually we can develop detachment. So that is the idea. The soul is in Purusha, is entangled in Prakriti.
Yeah.
So in one sense, the technical aspects of these verses, when they describe the properties of particular material elements, now we could go into analysis of that, but at one level the Bhagavatam describes it simply to indicate that each of these elements have or they're not just inert material natural elements, they have an experiential dimension to them. So the focus is not so much to get into the technicalities of each element's properties, because that could take a lot of time. But that is just broad background that now we understand how we experience them, so that gradually we can detach ourselves from that experience and we can experience something higher directly and through those elements.
Right. And that makes so much sense when you think about, like, for instance, the Western approach to science, where when they break down the elements, it breaks it down to that periodical table, whereas here it starts to break down the material elements and it says the senses, right? There's the senses,
Yes,
and there's
exactly.
the objects of the senses, and then there's the mind. So our senses are experiencing the material, are made of material energy. The mind is made of material energy, and that faculty is experiencing the rest of the material energy.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Now, within modern
And
science,
engaging with it. Experiencing it through the knowledge acquiring senses, and engaging with it through the senses of action.
True. See, one of the problems, modern science is very powerful in its own way, not criticizing it, but every focus, when we focus on looking at things in a particular way, we stop looking at it from other ways. So one of the problems with the modern scientific approach to the study of matter is, like last time I mentioned, there's no tastometer as such, but even beyond that, if we deconstruct matter down to its fundamental components, we can either talk about atoms which are made of electrons, neutrons, and protons, or we go down to further subatomic particles. There are so many. There's one philosopher of science who said, how many fundamental particles are there? So he says, as many as the researchers can get project grants to research. So it's a very complicated world. But the point is, none of those fundamental particles, whether we talk about electrons, protons, neutrons, or you go below that, none of them have any sensory properties. None of them have taste, smell, fragrance. But from those fundamental elements, from those fundamental particles, how do we get particles or get elements, get objects that have sensory properties? That is actually a mystery in science. carbon and diamond, if you consider the examples of things which are relatively coal and diamond, or there are certain elements which are chemically the very same, but experientially they're extremely different. So the experiential aspect, the mathematical aspect is very well done well taken care of by the approach of science, but the experiential aspect is not so taken care of.
Okay,
And
that's
why
interesting. And I guess that might explain why, from the Sankhya analysis, it begins with the senses and what the senses experience in the terms of what has fragrance, what has taste, what has a tactile experience, what has sound, and so on. You may as well just bring it right up to there, because that's where experience begins.
Yes, true.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Prabhu. So, and again, we don't want to get too nitty gritty, but at least a few of these terms come up in these first few verses. So maybe we can just throw these out and hear your thoughts on them.
Sure.
So text 19 reads, after the Supreme Personality of Godhead impregnates the material nature with his internal potency, material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiranmaya. This takes place in material nature when she is agitated by the destinations of the conditioned souls. So when I read that, I can take a little bit out of that. I understand it that through his glance, the souls are impregnated into this not yet fully developed material energy. But then when it says material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, what does that mean?
Okay. Firstly, when we translate from, say, Sanskrit to English, it's always a challenge to translate, especially philosophical concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So broadly, what is going on here is that, say, if we consider we have dry dough powder, and then we make it wet, and then we shape it. Maybe we make bread or cakes or whatever. We make rotis. So basically, the first stage, what we talked earlier was about unmanifested. That is pradhan.
Okay.
So in pradhan, when we start, say, you could say, put in water. So like we put water in the dough, now the transformation has begun. The dry is not of much use. Dry powder is just like dry powder.
So the dry flour is,
Dry flour,
you
yeah.
can't do much with it as it is. You add water.
So that addition of water is the first stage of its transformation. So
Okay.
that is when pradhan becomes mahat tattva.
Okay,
Now,
so the difference between pradhan and mahatattva is
basically, it is matter which is completely inactive and matter which has become activated.
okay.
Become activated. And then in that process, if we consider that the subtle elements are mind, intelligence, and ego. So all of us, in one sense, say, we have all these elements in our body, and there is considered to be a reservoir of all these elements from which the elements come in our body. So that reservoir of intelligence, from which two things will happen. The intelligence of all living beings will be drawn, and from which the other elements will unfold.
Okay.
That is what is being referred to. That is called as Hiranmaya.
Okay.
So one way,
Hiranmaya means exactly again?
it's basically the sum total of the intelligence. So
Okay.
from the pradhan, when further the Lord injects by his intelligence, by his glance, the living beings are injected. Then the transformation starts happening. So when it comes to the stage where the intelligence started manifesting, that is the stage what is called as Hiranmaya.
Okay. So
one way, just to,
yes,
complete this point.
please.
One way, when I walk, I use crutches. So my crutches are foldable. So they are not particularly shrinkable, but I've seen some crutches. They can become so small that you can actually put them in your pocket. And then you expand one bit, and you expand another bit, and then they can become huge. So that is, you could one way you can envision these particular elements. So it's like
telescopic.
So all the elements expanding from one to another.
Yeah.
So it's like when you shrink, they are very small. Then from one, you pull up to one level, then pull up to second level, pull up to third level.
Yeah.
So like that, from the previous one, the others start coming.
I see. Okay, that's helpful, and that's also helpful just in putting all this together in our heads, because we see in this chapter what plays out, and we see play out in other places in these sacred texts, is the idea that it says that the what are they called again? The Maha elements,
The
earth,
Mahabhuta.
the Mahabhuta,
Mahabhuta.
the earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then more subtle mind, intelligence, and ego. But if you take earth, water, fire, air, and ether, that ether has the element of sound, and then the next one, air, has two elements, right? It has sound as well as the tactile sense, and then the next one, fire, has the sound as well as tactile sense as well as visual sense, and you go the whole way up to earth, which has all of them, including fragrance in it, right? So it's like earth has all. It's almost like telescopic, right? Each one has more than the other, and so then we see that play out here also, that one element is going to develop out of the next, is going to develop out of the next, is going to develop out of the next, almost in that telescopic way. So the first one that comes out when you start to cook that batter, when that dough is in the oven, time is now the heat, and it's moving the elements. The first thing that we see, the first thing that manifests, is the element of intelligence. And then from that, each one is going to unfold. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's just check in on text 20, where it says, thus, after manifesting variegatedness, the effulgent Mahatattva, which is right now, intelligence is the one thing that's manifested, which contains all the universes within itself, which is the root of all cosmic manifestations, and which is not destroyed at the time of annihilation, swallows the darkness that covered the effulgence at the time of dissolution. So we're talking about cycles of creation and destruction here. And there's a Mahatattva that's not destroyed when everything else is destroyed. And now it's going to illuminate not just this universe, but I guess all the universes.
Yes, true.
Is that right? Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So
So
the idea is that, in
Yeah.
one sense, see, you could put it that in the Bhagavatam, it's often it's a philosophical work, but it's also a work of poetry.
Mhm.
So what that means is that there is a blending of the literal and the metaphorical.
Okay.
So technically, or in modern English language, the term used is not metaphorical but metonymical. METONYM, metonym.
Mhm.
So metonym means what? Basically, like, say, the White House declared that it will launch an attack on a Middle East country.
Right. It's not
Now,
the house declared it, but the person who
Yeah.
resides in that house declared it.
yeah, it's a little more than that. See, what it means is White House is a reality. There is White House, but
Okay.
White House also represents a bigger reality. It's not just the person; it also represents the government of the USA.
Mhm.
So what is described as reality, but reality is more than what is described. So it's not that sometimes when we say something is metaphorical, that means it has no objective reality. So White House actually exists.
Mhm.
At the same time, it's not just White House that is making an announcement. The White House exists, and the White House also represents something.
Yeah.
So what does it represent? It represents the US government. So like we need 50 hands for doing this. We need 50 hands for doing this work. So now we say 50 hands, but the hands represent people. So hands are also literal, but what is the reality is more than that. So in that sense, when the Bhagavatam describes things, there is something which is literal in that narrative, but there is also something which is non-literal. And both of them, there is a you could say a blend of the two, which will come later in this chapter when we come to the point where the universal form is just not waking up. So here also the point which I'm making is that this light usually represents knowledge, a state of cognition, and darkness represents the state of ignorance. So basically, as the creation is unfolding with the Mahatattva, the Hiranyamaya is manifested, the Mahatattva is manifested. So basically, the darkness that was present in between between existences, in between the universes, that darkness is being dissipated and light is coming out. That means the souls are gradually moving from ignorance toward knowledge. So there's both a literal and a non-literal implication of this narrative.
Okay. All right. So that's very helpful. So from there, why don't you just go ahead and take us through this chapter in a general way, but help us understand how it unfolds and what's being described and how it's significant or why it's important for us to understand.
Okay. So there are basically from here onwards, each element that starts coming out, its characteristics are described. So we have the Mahatattva has come, then the false ego will come, then the intelligence will come. The sum total of intelligence is different from the intelligence itself, because that's just an abstract, or that's more like a raw thing, raw substrate, whereas this is more like a formed aspect. So it moves forward, and each of the elements as they come out, they are described in terms of the characteristics, and sometimes the characteristics are described in terms of the three modes, so Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. That of course you must have discussed it.
Yes.
So these three modes. So now, one of the things I find significant here is that in 330, in the 30th verse, the characteristics of intelligence are described. Samshayo atha viparyasa nishchaya smrutirevacha. That the first characteristic of intelligence is described to be doubt, which is fascinating. But normally we think on the spiritual path we require faith, and doubt is considered to be a negative thing, considered to be something which we want to give up. But what here it is said is that doubt is a characteristic of the intelligence. That means that it's only it requires intelligence to doubt. Gullible people will just believe whatever you are told. So the Bhagavatam is not simply calling for faith. It is recognizing that doubt is a sign of the intelligence, but you could say doubt is not the only sign of intelligence. So it gives other characteristics also. By doubt, it says next thing is, okay, if I doubt, maybe this is not right. Then what? Then maybe then I realize, yeah, what I was thinking was wrong. It's misapprehension, viparyasa. And then when I realize I pursued something wrong, then I start perceiving things correctly, nishchaya. So for example, we all grow up with the idea that we are our bodies and this world is where we can be happy. But then we experience that actually maybe the promises of the world that it will make us happy, maybe they are not right.
Okay.
So that doubt comes in, and doubt is a sign of intelligence.
All right.
And then I said, hey, I thought this will make me happy, but this person has achieved everything that I dreamt of and is not happy.
Raghunath just realized that about certain Halloween candies, just like yesterday. Right? He was firmly of the faith that they would bring happiness.
They would fulfill me in a way, in a deeper way. Not all, of course, not all Halloween candies, but like a Heath bar. Come on.
Okay. Yes, we're
wrong.
So
I was wrong.
I'm just taking a sample of one verse because we could go into the characters of all of them.
Very interesting verse too, because also it appears to be practically identical. Some of the terms are identical, and some of the terms seem to be indicating the same thing. But these are the vrittis that are mentioned in the Yoga Sutras.
Yes, that's true.
The fluctuations of the mind. Yeah.
Yes. So from doubt we come to misapprehension. Because of doubt I realize, hey, this is not right. And then what is the right thing? We come to correct apprehension. So nishchaya, correct. There is a third characteristic of intelligence. And the fourth characteristic they say is memory. Nowadays, at least till maybe last 10 years or before, IQ was considered to be the primary sign of intelligence. And that depends a lot on memory. So memory is not just remembering facts over here. Here, when memory is said to be a sign of intelligence, what it refers to is what we have learned from our past experiences, we remember that. What we have learned from our previous others' experiences, we remember that. That is also a sign of intelligence. And fascinating, last part of intelligence is said to be sleep.
Sleep.
Now, how is sleep or the state of sleeping or dreaming, how in the wide world can that be said to be a sign of intelligence? So now the commentators have given different explanations for this, but what the general understanding is that sleep indicates a state of withdrawal. That the world is going on, it's constantly going on. Like many metropolitan cities say the city never sleeps. But we all have to sleep. We can't function. So sleep at one level is a biological need without which you can't live. But then it is considered a sign of intelligence in the sense that an intelligent person knows when to withdraw from situations. If you have, we say constantly keep worried about situations, then that is not a sign of intelligence. So sleep indicates that withdrawal, the capacity to withdraw and just let things go.
Let it go.
Let it go. So that is also a sign of intelligence.
Let it go.
I know what you want to do, Kaustubha. You
There's a song,
want to
Let It
do
Go.
what
I don't know if you
do,
heard that over in
which
India
is break
for-
into a song right now.
It's a very famous song.
But he's like, well, no, I've already chastised Raghunath for being frivolous. It'll be bad if I'm frivolous now.
I haven't changed this.
Yeah.
I'll do it for you, okay?
All right.
Chaitanya Charan, this is for you. Let it go. Let it go. That's all I know.
Okay.
That's all I know. Okay. Let's get serious now, guys. Come on.
Okay. After
So
that comes the ego.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right? The egoism comes after intelligence. Develops out of
Yes.
intelligence, right?
True. So I went a little ahead. We are going along now.
Mhm.
So we had intelligence, then we have ego. Now basically what is happening is then ether comes up. Now
Ether.
in one of ether. Now this idea of ether is something which is in modern science tried to prove the existence of ether, and it was proved. But when the Bhagavatam talks about ether, it's somewhat different. It is how do I describe it? See, in modern science, if we consider that, if we ask what is space or empty space,
Mhm.
so we can say that is where there is no matter. So
Wait, I'm
space is
sorry. Where
defined-
there is no,
no matter, no material, nothing is present.
then we
what
call that
an empty
space. Okay. Empty space.
Yeah. So you define space as the absence of matter. And then we define matter as that which occupies space. So one of the definitions of matter is that which occupies space. There are spatial properties. Now,
Okay.
of course, you can go into philosophy, but the point is that there is no independent definition of space. What is actually space? So ether, from that perspective, it is that it is considered like the subtle substratum in which all of existence, all of, we could say, the remaining gross elements exist.
Mhm.
So it is the subtlest among the gross elements. So it is not easily perceived. If you consider the earth, when it is said that the earth is associated with all the five senses, what it means also is that we can perceive the earth with all the five senses. We can smell the earth, we can see the earth, we can touch the earth, we can taste the earth. So we can perceive the earth with all the senses. But as we go backward, ether, it practically can't be perceived at all. What the
Mhm.
Bhagavatam says is the only way to perceive ether is through the transmission of sound. That sound is transmitted through ether. So now again, in modern science, there is this question that do we need some medium in the universe for the transmission of electromagnetic waves? When the sun rays come to the earth, is in between complete emptiness, or is there something there through which the sun's rays get transmitted? And the current idea, there are different ideas. Again, I don't want to get into technicalities,
Mhm.
but the idea is that it can transmit through space also. So space is considered that which contains practically nothing. But
In other words, it's a conductor, but somehow it's a conductor as well.
exactly, yeah. So
And it
ether is
conducts
defined-
especially sound.
Now here sound, in one sense, yeah, sound represents, from the Vedic perspective, it represents the primeval form of energy. That
Primeval-
idea that
Primeval
the
what?
Form of
primeval
energy.
form of energy. So that there is some idea about that in various other traditions also. In the Bible, it says in the beginning was
The
the
word.
word, and the word was God.
Yeah.
The idea that sound or the word are primeval to the creation. That is indicated over here. That the first gross element that is manifested, its characteristic is sound.
Mhm.
So in that sense, the first element that becomes experienceable, ether is practically not experienceable for us, but sound is what is experienceable. So again, the whole idea is that it's from our experiential perspective that intelligence is being defined. Sorry,
Okay.
ether is being defined. And going back to intelligence also, the intelligence is not defined in terms of the mathematical skills or that kind of skills. It is not dependent on the counting or measuring. It's dependent on experience. Hey, this experience seems to be wrong. This experience is right. So it's a very experiential description of matter.
Okay.
Of all the elements.
Yeah.
And now in this, there is one purport where Srila Prabhupada explains that you have some questions, or should I go ahead with this?
No. So it's moving along now. Yeah. Now we're ether, and something else you wanted to share about that?
Okay, so let me complete these elements. And
Sure.
we're just giving an indication of how the properties are indicated over here.
Mm-hmm.
So we consider fire is appreciated by its light, is 40th verse. So we're going one by one through the elements, and
Yes.
the fire is appreciated by its light and by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, and to give rise to hunger, thirst, eating, and drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, it's experiential. I can see light over it. There's light's gone, fire. There must be some kind of fire over here. And its ability to cook. If this food has got transformed, there must be some heat over here.
When we say fire here, do we really, like, would it be more accurate just to say heat?
Yes and no. My understanding here is that fire represents heat and associated energies. So it's not just heat. Just like in yoga, prana, we can say it's oxygen, but it's not just oxygen. It's much more than oxygen. Oxygen is critical for living, but prana is a little more subtle concept than oxygen. So similarly, fire.
Well, then let me ask this way. Like, for instance, we just spoke about ether. And sometimes I've even seen ether, like, in these contexts, like within the Vedic, within our Vedic textual context, I've even seen it maybe loosely translated as sky.
Yeah, sky or space.
Yeah.
That's because this it's very difficult to have a literal, accurate translation for this concept.
And so when so I'm wondering if that same principle applies to fire. Like when we think fire, we think of a flame. But is that exactly what we're speaking?
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you could say it's not literally fire in the sense of a burning flame. It's fire, you could say it's heat or
light. Is it also light?
Yeah, light is, it's known by light.
Yeah.
It's more like what is it that makes elements inflammable? Say, for example, in Ayurveda, it is said that there is a digestive fire in the body. Now, and that digestive fire is critical to health.
Right.
If a person's digestive fire is weak, then that causes them all kinds of health issues.
Right.
So now, if you look at the allopathic model, there cannot be any fire in the body, literally speaking.
Yeah.
So they talk about catabolism and anabolism, where the body constructs a body basically makes energy by breaking down what is eaten and then reforming it in the form of energy carrying elements. But for this, they need some energy. So what we could do is, instead of using it specifically as heat, we could call it as energy and primarily heat energy. But it's more of primarily heat energy, but it represents energy. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, and again, for scientists, these things can get more interesting. But it just seems like, in other words, people may speak of, I have a fire in my belly right now, like I'm really hungry.
Yeah.
And they may think that they're speaking, when they share that, they're speaking entirely metaphorically. But here we're seeing a hint that actually, the same element that is there that makes fire is there in your belly, right? That there actually is something to it.
True, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, fire in the belly is not just, it's more than a metaphor.
There's no flame, but the same energetic element is there in both.
Yes, definitely. That's true.
Okay.
So moving on now, so we discussed one more, the example of fire over here as a sample of the qualities that are described in general. Now, if we move forward, then it comes to grosser and grosser elements. It goes to ultimately it comes to earth. And then now it's said that all these elements are formed, but just the elements are just raw materials. They themselves are of not much functional use unless they are put together.
They're unassembled right now.
Yeah, they're unassembled. Yeah, they're like
Okay.
raw. They're raw parts. So then they have to be put together. And for them to be put together, so if you come to here, is that in the verse text 50, it is said that all these elements were unmixed. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of creation, along with time, work, and the qualities of the modes of material natures, entered into the universe with the total material energy in 7 divisions. So the idea is that now all of matter is being pervaded by the presence of the divine. So without that inner presence of the divine, matter doesn't get activated. So in one sense, it's like this is where the idea of the cosmic person comes up. Just like our physical body doesn't get activated without the presence of the soul.
Mhm.
So similarly, the universal body doesn't get activated without the presence of the Supreme Person.
And so the Purusha Shukta prayers of the Vedas are speaking about this.
Yes. So that particular cosmic being, he is referred to in many different ways. There are many different prayers offered to him, many different ways he's invoked. So at this stage, so now what is described is, so first the elements themselves were described. Then from there, if you go to 53rd verse, 54th verse, first, sorry, 53rd, Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Virat Purusha, situated himself in that golden egg. So what has happened is, all the elements have come out, and now the elements have formed an egg shaped. So the universe is considered to be an egg shaped thing, Brahmanda. Brahma is the universe, Anda is a egg shaped.
So within the broader entire material realm, now egg-shaped universes are manifesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So the raw materials have led to the basic structure of the universe, right? Not the entire structure, but at least the basic structure of the outer structure of the universe.
Okay.
The contents have not yet come.
Okay.
So we could say it's if we are designing, say we design a building, and then we start designing the rooms inside it. At least we get the raw structure outside.
Okay.
So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Virat Purusha, situated himself in that golden egg. So this golden egg is the universe, which was lying on the water, and he divided into many departments. So those departments are described as, first of all, a mouth appeared in him, and then came forth the organ of speech, and with it the god of fire, the deity who presides over that organ. Then a pair of nostrils appeared, and then appeared the olfactory sense as well as prana, the vital air. So earlier the elements were manifesting as discrete elements. Now they are manifesting in a whole unit, in a whole structure. It's like if somebody wants to play Scrabble or play a word game. So you have a box in which all the letters are there, and maybe the box has one small hole. So one by one, shake it and the letters fall out. So all the letters have fallen out, and then we have to assemble the letters in a proper way for something meaningful to come out.
Right.
So first, the evolution of the elements is described. Now the arrangement of the elements in a structure is described.
Okay. And that's specifically in the terms of the senses.
Yes. So it's in terms of the visible structure of the body.
Yeah. So we already had the elements which will be sensed. And now the senses are developing which can then sense the sense objects, experience the sense objects.
That's true. Yeah. So now this is an important point. Let me see if I can explain this. There are sense objects and there are senses. But in the Bhagavatam's understanding, the senses are different from the sensory organs. That means that we have the eyes we can say the senses are the eyes, but actually the eyes are the physical manifestation of the senses. There are subtle senses also. And again,
so similar to what we've been discussing in terms of fire, in terms of ether, there's an element of sight, and the eye becomes a conduit of that energy, or a holder of that energy.
The physical tool through which the physical tool through which this capacity for sight works.
Yeah.
And there have been near-death experiences where people perceive themselves from above the body.
Mm-hmm.
See, my body is lying down. I can see myself. The doctor is doing this. The doctor is doing. What are they doing? So,
Raghu's perking up.
I've written the book on the reincarnation. So when I did research, some very amazing cases come up. It's like what all people can perceive when they're out of body. It's they can usually people just hover around, but sometimes they can go out. So there is a story of one man who was quite wealthy, and he was old and he was sick and expected to die, and he was in the ICU because he had got a heart attack, and his relatives were talking outside. So, and one of the relatives, now generally, quite often people, if somebody is old, they wonder when the person will die, what inheritance I'll get. So one of the persons, he said that it's about time this person died. And this person who was having the out of body experience came there right at that time.
Okay.
And he heard him say that. And the others, hey, don't speak like this. So he afterwards he recovered and he came back and he told that person, I heard you saying like this. Even if I die, you are not going to get a single penny. I'm going to disinherit.
Oh, he must have freaked out.
Yeah. So the point is that so the senses, even if a person's sensory organs are not working,
Yeah.
the eyes are completely closed, even the areas of the brain which process visual stimuli are also not working. So, but that person can perceive.
Yeah.
That's
So
because,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that's because the mind, which is subtle, has subtle senses associated with it. And those subtle senses perceive. So yesterday I had given the metaphor of a movie, like you're watching a rom-com which turns out into a horror movie.
Yeah.
So we could say something like a person who is watching a movie, but they wear some special goggles, special glasses, special goggles, by which they can only see the movie and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then sometimes the goggles just fall off. And then now, so if you visualize that particular movie, now they can't see through the goggle is broken, the glass is broken, but they can see without it. So whereas modern science holds that consciousness emerges from the brain, but many near-death experiencers, they often feel that my consciousness was clearer when I was not in the body. So in one sense, the sensory organ is actually a step down for our capacity of vision. So it's a tool, but it's also a limiting tool.
Right. Okay. So great. Now we're coming towards the end. So we've seen now the material elements are there. They're unmanifest. Gradually they become manifest. What is to be sensed becomes manifest. Then the senses themselves, along with their controlling deities, are manifest.
Well, I would say here it's not just manifest. They are appearing in the cosmic body. They were already, in one sense, they were manifest, but now they're appearing in the cosmic body. The same thing, but like when I say manifest means the letters come out of the box.
Yeah.
Now they're arranging themselves.
Now they're becoming arranged in those shapes. Okay. Now, when we get to the very end of the chapter, it begins to speak about this waking up, and maybe you can share what's happening there.
Yeah. So it is said that all the various deities, they entered into the cosmic body, Virat Purusha, but still it couldn't be spurred. And then text 67 comes. Lord Vishnu entered his feet with the faculty of locomotion. So it just goes on and on. And then finally, however, the 70th verse is, however, when the inner controller, the deity presiding over consciousness, entered the heart with reason, at that very moment, the cosmic being arose from the causal waters.
So here the cosmic being represents...
Okay. So here what is happening is, you may say normally the cosmic being, isn't it Vishnu? Well, Vishnu has been mentioned earlier already. So the idea is that Vishnu also, at one level, is a part of the cosmic administrative system.
Mhm.
He is one deity. There are Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, there are Shiva. There are various deities like that. So the idea is that the Supreme Lord has multiple manifestations, and Vishnu is the manifestation who maintains the world. But that manifestation of the Lord alone is not enough for awakening the universal body. It is the indwelling divinity. At one level, Vishnu and the indwelling divinity are not different, but
Mhm.
just that they perform different functions. Just like we have the Paramatma in the heart, but generally the Paramatma is not the object of eternal loving reciprocation. It is
Right.
Bhagavan, it is Krishna, who is the object of loving reciprocation. So similarly, Vishnu is mentioned over there. Vishnu is more of a functional role over there. So the inner controller, the deity presiding over consciousness. That means it refers to the Paramapurusha, the indwelling super soul. So when that being entered the heart with reason, at that very moment the cosmic being arose from the causal waters. So this also represents that Chittena Hridayam Chaitya Kshetrajna Pravishadita Virat Tadaiva Purusha Salilat Utadistaha. So Chittena Hridayam, in the heart, that conscious being entered. So the idea is that our body may have its own capacity to maintain itself, but unless the soul enters into the region of the heart, the body doesn't get activated. So
Mhm.
similarly, unless all the all the capacities for the functioning of the universe have been assembled, but unless the divinity enters into the heart of the cosmic body, the functionality doesn't get activated.
Okay.
So you could say that this, again, they're going to the metonym. What is a literal description? It is also beyond its illustrating a principle that the activation of material matter doesn't just require material elements and material mechanisms.
Mhm.
It also requires a transcendental consciousness.
Mhm.
So that is what is demonstrated through this narrative.
Okay. And then the very last verse.
Okay. So therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge, acquired through concentrating devotional service, one should contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Now, this is the key. In the previous session, I had mentioned that how this analysis of 24 elements is done by different schools of thought. But in the Bhagavatam, the idea is that we study the 24 elements to understand from whom they came and towards whom they are meant to take us.
Mhm.
So till now it is described from whom they came, from whom the elements came, without whom the elements can't be activated. And now, when we understand this is how the universe has come, this is how the universe is functioning, then we want to focus on that Supreme Lord, the essence of existence.
Okay.
So how do we focus on that essence of existence? Then through devotion, through detachment, through advancement in spiritual knowledge.
And that's
So
what's
quite
going to
often,
come up in the upcoming chapters. He's going to explain
yes,
how to meditate.
exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So in a sense, what happened in this chapter, let's say we were all spiritual scientists and we were kind of grasping, obviously this whole thing, there's many layers of depth to understanding it. And the more that you understand about science, the more that you be seeing how much this chapter is revealing. But just on a surface level, it's saying that ultimately it's from Lord Vishnu that the material elements come. That they have their pattern in which they all take shape. And then ultimately it's the presence of spirit in the form of Lord Vishnu that brings it all to life. Just as that's happening on a universal level, realize that it's happening within your own body, that same Lord is within your own body giving it life, and now meditate on him.
Yes, that's true.
And now I'm going to show you how to meditate on it in the coming chapters in a variety of different ways.
Yes, true.
All right, Prabhu. Thank
Beautiful.
you so much. You really helped us with that. It's still, I still feel like there's so much I'm not getting, but I at least feel like I'm getting a fundamental understanding of it. So
Time
Yeah.
flies when you're talking spiritual science,
it
Kaustubha.
sure does. It sure does. We're out of time.
9:02.
Do we have any takeaways, Mayor?
We do have some. Elements expand telescopically like the Mahabhutas.
Hmm.
Soul,
That'd be a good
souls-
T-shirt. Not!
Telescope.
Souls are gradually moving from ignorance towards knowledge.
Okay.
Hey, I like that. I like that.
Okay. Doubt is a sign of intelligence, but not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
An intelligent person knows when to withdraw from situations.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Very true.
Very
Matter is activated by the inner presence of the divine.
Yes.
And sound is the primeval form of energy.
All right.
And what will you sacrifice for wisdom of the sages?
And what will you sacrifice?
What will you sacrifice? What will you give up from your greedy, lusty, desirous body for wisdom of the sages? Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, everybody loves you here. You are lovable. You are humble and lovable and adorable and squeezable and huggable. I'm going to call you
Are you
huggable.
sure? Are you describing
Huggable
him or
Prabhu.
Underdog? the humble, lovable
Underdog is
shoeshine
humble
boy?
and lovable. Thank you, shoeshine boy. No one even knows what we're talking about. No one that ever watches Underdog except
Humble
you.
and lovable.
Humble and lovable. But that's where I did get it from. Prabhu, thank you for being on our show. We love having you here. You are our rock. We like to just hold you, your feet. We like to hold your feet. We find steadiness in reaching out and embracing your feet, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody for joining us.
Prabhu, you are my model of how to serve and how to share Krishna Bhakti, and I'm fortunate that I can be of some assistance to you.
What did he say? What did he say? I'm a model? Well, I haven't been called that today. I'm a model.